Let's go back to the winter of 1807. In the middle of a blinding blizzard, deep in what was then East Prussia, something unthinkable happened. Napoleon Bonaparte's Grande Armée, the most feared military force in all of Europe, was fought to a bloody, brutal standstill. This is the story of the Battle of Eylau, the day that cracked the myth of Napoleon's invincibility.
Just take a look at this. This famous painting shows Napoleon the morning after the battle, and, well, it's just a frozen, snow-covered field of bodies. It perfectly captures the sheer horror of what happened. This wasn't some glorious victory. This was a frozen graveyard.
You know, one of Napoleon's own top generals, the famous Marshal Murat, said it best when he saw the field, "What a massacre, and without result. A horrifying, pointless slaughter." And that's really the central question we're going to dig into. How on earth did it come to this?
Okay, so to really get why Eylau is such a profound shock, you have to understand the context. Before this battle, Napoleon and his Grande Armée weren't just considered good, they were seen as absolutely unbeatable. They didn't just win battles, they annihilated entire armies.
I mean, just look at this run he was on. In December of 1805, he pulls off his absolute masterpiece at Austerlitz. Less than a year later, he completely smashes the legendary Prussian army at Jena Auerstedt. By the end of 1806, his army is just rolling into Poland, basically unopposed. The legend of Napoleon's genius was at its absolute peak.
So after all these huge wins, you'd think both sides would just pack it in for the winter, right? Rest, resupply, the usual. But the Russian commander, a guy named General Bennigsen, does something nobody expected. He launches a surprise winter offensive, hitting the French flank. This forced Napoleon's hand.
And Napoleon's response? Well, it was classic Napoleon. Absolutely brilliant. You can see it on the map here. He came up with this massive plan to swing his army around, cut the Russians off from their supply lines, and trap Bennigsen's entire force. It wasn't a plan for a battle, it was a plan for total annihilation.
But this is where the whole story takes a wild turn. One single, almost random moment of chance is about to unravel this perfect plan and turn a brilliant trap into a desperate, frozen nightmare.
So get this. A small group of Cossacks, pretty much by accident, stumble upon and capture a French messenger. And guess what he was carrying? A copy of Napoleon's secret orders. Just like that, the Russian commander Bennigsen knew everything. The trap was blown. So instead of a decisive battle, Napoleon is now stuck in this grim chase across Poland in the middle of a horrible winter storm.
This whole desperate pursuit finally ends at a small town called Bloodiest. The fighting starts on February 7th and just gets worse on the 8th, under the most insane conditions you can imagine. We're talking heavy, swirling snowstorms where you could barely see a few feet in front of you. The battlefield was pure chaos.
Early on that second day, with the battle just a bloody stalemate, Napoleon decides he's had enough. He's going to punch right through the Russian center. He picks one of his toughest commanders, Marshal Murat, to lead his entire 7th Corps in a massive frontal assault.
And this is where it all goes horribly, horribly wrong. The plan was simple: charge straight ahead. But as they started moving, the blizzard got even worse. They were completely blind. The entire corps drifted off course to the left and marched directly, and I mean directly, into the line of fire of a massive Russian artillery battery, 70 cannons, all waiting for them.
In just a few minutes, Mugrat's corps was practically annihilated. Over 5,000 casualties. An entire French army corps was basically erased from the battlefield in the blink of an eye.
With that disaster, a gigantic hole just ripped open in the French line. The Russians poured right through. For a terrifying moment, the battle was almost lost. It got so bad that Russian soldiers nearly captured Napoleon himself at his command post. His own personal staff had to draw their swords and fight them off.
So, the French army is on the verge of complete collapse. The center is gone, a whole corps has been destroyed, and the emperor himself is in mortal danger. In this moment of absolute crisis, Napoleon turns to his very last, most desperate option.
So what do? What's the move when your entire army is about to be destroyed right in front of you? Well, Napoleon's answer was to bet everything he had left on one final, monumental gamble.
And this is the man for the job. The flashy, incredibly daring Marshal Murat. He was probably the greatest cavalry commander of his time. Napoleon gives him a simple order: charge. Charge with everything we've got.
What happened next has gone down as one of the greatest cavalry charges in all of military history.
Murat rounded up 11,000 troopers, every dragoon, every cuirassier, even the elite Imperial Guard cavalry, and led them in one gigantic wave, thundering through the blizzard and right into the heart of the Russian army.
And the impact was just unbelievable. They smashed through the Russian center, they trampled infantry, they broke through a second line of soldiers, and they got their revenge, sabering the very gunners who had destroyed Augereau's corps. Now, the charge didn't win the battle, but it did something almost as important. It hit the pause button. It stunned the Russians, paralyzing their attack and buying Napoleon just enough time for reinforcements to show up and stabilize the line.
The battle just raged on until dark, when both sides were just completely spent. That night, the Russian army decided to retreat, which technically left Napoleon in control of the battlefield. But let me tell you, this felt nothing like a victory.
And the cost? I mean, look at these numbers. It was horrifying. Historians still argue about the exact figures, but the estimates are just staggering. Each side might have lost up to 25,000 men, maybe more. In one day of fighting, maybe 50,000 soldiers were killed or wounded. The field was a literal wasteland of bodies.
Which brings us right back to Marshal Ney's famous line. Standing there the next morning, looking out at that horror, he saw the simple truth. All that fighting, all that death, had achieved absolutely nothing. The Russian army got away, and the French were too shattered to even think about pursuing them.
So why does this horrible battle matter so much? Because for the very first time, Napoleon's Grande Armée had not won. They had been fought to a bloody draw. That aura of invincibility that had surrounded Napoleon since his greatest victories was completely shattered in the snows of Eylau.
Sure, Napoleon would bounce back and win a huge victory against the Russians a few months later, but Eylau was a warning sign, a huge one. It proved that his armies could be stopped, that sheer guts and brutal fighting could stand up to his genius. Which leaves us with one final thought. Was this horrific, pointless massacre the first real crack in the foundation of Napoleon's empire?